individual, and I'm not ashamed of anything that Richland has done in its past. I think a lot of people think that we are not everything we could be, and perhaps we could be more. But I'm not ashamed of who we are. And I sometimes take things personally when they suggest that we don't listen. We listen. The question is whether or not people actually have a voice and whether they come to council. I look at the people that are running in position one, and not too many of them ever actually made a council meeting, and that always kind of surprises me. While I've been the representative for the City of Richland, I created something called the Energy Community Alliance. Where all the nuclear cities got together to talk to the Department of Energy and try to make coherent policy decisions. It's one of those kind of things that I'm very proud of because it's given Richland an opportunity at the Department of Energy to have a voice. And why is that important? It's important because that's where most of our disposable income comes from, whether it's P&L or it's out at the site on cleanup. The bottom line on this, we are at a threshold in our community on which way we want to go. I'd really believe that, and so I agree with a lot of the fellow members here. The question is, what are we? I can tell you what I don't believe. I don't think we should be a sanctuary city. I don't think we should support retail marijuana sales. And I don't believe in a $15 minimum wage because I think it's counterproductive to the individuals who it's intended to benefit.
Thank you. All right, we'll start with one of the aspects of it.
So the TBD district, it's an interesting thing. It's not that I don't necessarily agree or disagree, it's how it was done. Going to impact our most vulnerable, I think it's not a decision that we make lightly. And I think it's a decision that we look at every single avenue before we do it. And I think in this case, the TBD district was put in place to encompass all of the Richland city limits, specifically so only 7 people could have a say in the matter, instead of all of us. Having a say in the matter. And I think one of the most important things to remember is that when the Richland City shops were built on the other side of the river, the city's always been looking for a way to have a direct line to those city shops. And with the bridge and the bridge project and the plan, that's the direct line. However, since 93 or 94, I believe, the city could have put provisions in place to be saving money for the bridge rather than straddling $4 million on the backs of Richland residents. So, thank you.
Yeah, you know, it's a math question, right? So a lot of voices that I hear now are kind of Johnny-come-latelys to the scene. This is a project that's been going on for 10 years. Count them, 10 years. City actively involved citizenry on Dupertale and various other places in regard to this. You don't build a bridge that costs $38 million overnight. You have to go out and get funding for that bridge. So we got federal, state dollars, and it mounted up to about 34 of the $38 million. And unfortunately, the Washington legislature, probably because of political reasons on our representatives who voted against the car tax or the gas tax, we were denied that additional $4 million. And so I think there's been a little bit of a push to divide Richland to north and south and east and west. And I resent that too now that I think about it, because we're all one community and we all are successful if we work together. You know, I look at Queensgate. You know, Queensgate is a great thing because you get sales tax. You know, people don't understand that cities only get their revenue from property tax and sales tax. By having people show up there, that lessens your property tax. That's a good idea. Had people expressed their concerns, maybe we would have done something different. I don't think so, because we explored the fixed income questions. We explored the idea of a toll booth. Couldn't do that. The costs were too high. The big question you have to face is if you ignore the money you have and you don't have the ability to fund the bridge, that funding source will dry up. And if the city ever needs money again, either from the federal government or from state government for grants and loans, you're not going to get it because you didn't take what you had. And that's the truth, and that's why the city council made a very informed decision to do the right thing. Nobody likes taxes and fees, but you can't lose that kind of money and deny citizens the opportunity to have a full transportation program in the city of Richland.
All right. Thompson.
So there's a word called virtue signaling out there nowadays. That means you want to feel good about what you do, whether it makes a difference or not. So I'll tell you in the real world what you do. We have 54 million gallons of nuclear waste out at the site. My efforts have been able to try to clean that up as quickly and efficiently and to make sure that the funding is available to do that. I've also initiated an effort to change the definition of high-level waste. What would that do for us? It would change the dynamics of cleanup. It would be faster and cheaper, and Richland could become the community it always wants to do. Just a word about that, because most people don't understand it. The United States is the only country in the world that bases what nuclear waste is on how it was created, not what it is today. Anybody knows about nuclear energy and half-lives? What was put in tanks many years ago isn't what is there today. You can expand and clean things up much faster by making the definition of nuclear waste make sense. The Paris Accord report, I read it. And this is the problem I have with sometimes my liberal friends. The Paris Accord would increase electrical rates on people that are least fortunate to pay it. It's, power is the inelastic curve, right? I mean, it's kind of a math question. And so if you start thinking about it a little bit, everybody has to have a certain amount of power. Everybody has to pay for that power. So why would you want to raise people's electrical rates on the very people that can't afford it? That always kind of astounds me. The question is, what is the big concern that I have out there in our community?
Yep.
Yeah, let me address a couple of things. Richland's probably the most transparent community clearly in the Tri-Cities, maybe in the state of Washington. In regards to the decisions that are made, we send out your utility bills and we put flyers in each one of those bills and kind of tell you what's going on. We've got a website. We reach out to the community aspect of places, the neighborhoods that are going to be impacted when we make decisions. So I think we do a pretty darn good job, but some people just don't want to pay attention, and you can't really do much about that. The biggest concern I have for our community, and frankly, the United States, is people don't think anymore. There's something called critical thinking. The idea when somebody says something, they may have an internal motive for why they say it. We seem to be able to lack the ability to discern when people are guessing you. And I don't know what happened. I don't know if we dumb people down, or all I'm suggesting is when you go out and have a conversation with somebody, and when you have a conversation with your children, and they say something to you, why don't you push back and have them justify their opinion, or justify the opinion that they've heard? Because a lot of it is just so much malarkey. And we've lost that as a skill. I'm an attorney, so I come by this naturally, I suppose. But when I look at decisions that cities make, the concern I have is people haven't thought it all the way through, and they want to do what they think is best. But when you pull the string 10 years down the road, what the hell happened? That's my concern. Start to think again.
Thank you.
A conservative agenda being promulgated in the Department of Energy, and you have an Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, who pushes back on certain things. One of them are sanctuary cities. I don't think it makes sense to violate the law. We have one law, we don't have 9 laws. And I think we do a disservice to the idea of law. When we get to choose what laws we obey and which ones we ignore, what we're really doing is telling the justice system and government to go to hell. And I think you can do that, and you can have a revolution, or you can win through the ballot box and make those changes. And maybe that's what the city, if that's what the city wants to do, that's a vote that the city can take, right? I just don't think that benefits the city of Richland. And I think that when I look around, I think that there are others on the dais with me today that would disagree with that point of view, and they hold those opinions honestly. I just think it's a terrible idea.
Thank you. Ms.